At her wedding, my daughter hung a framed photo of me at the entrance with a caption scrawled beneath it in cruel, mocking letters. No entry. The picture wasn't just a photograph, it was a declaration, a dismissal, a wall erected between us for the world to see. A cruel blow from the very child who was supposed to be my pride, my joy, my reason for enduring life's hardest years. My chest felt hollow, as though all the air had been punched from my lungs. I had imagined walking her down the aisle, giving her away with trembling pride. Instead, I stood frozen before that sign, guests glancing awkwardly in my direction, some whispering, some avoiding my eyes altogether. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply turned around and walked away, leaving behind the laughter, the music, and the carefully constructed illusion of family happiness. I walked away from the dreams I had built, the countless nights I had spent picturing this day as a moment of joy. My footsteps echoed with the weight of betrayal, and by the time I reached my car, I already knew something between us had broken beyond repair. But 3 hours later, the quiet I had wrapped around myself shattered. My phone erupted, screen glowing like a furious storm, 73 missed calls. My daughter's betrayal, meant to humiliate me, had instead spiraled into chaos. Before I explain what happened next, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are right now. The harsh blue glare of my phone sliced through the gentle amber light of my reading lamp, like a blade. The device buzzed against the worn leather armrest of my chair, violent, relentless, demanding my attention. The newspaper slipped from my lap as I fumbled for the phone, my reading glasses catching the glow, as if the truth itself had been dragged out of the shadows. Her face appeared, Eva, my daughter. For a moment, she wasn't the stranger who had banished me from her wedding, but the little girl I once carried on my shoulders, her laughter like bells in my ears. Her excitement lit up the screen, so radiant it seemed to pour into the room. "Dad," she squealed, "I have incredible news. I'm engaged." The words froze me mid-motion. My coffee mug halfway to my lips never made it. Behind her, the camera revealed glimpses of a life I hadn't known she was living. Marble countertops, towering glass windows, with San Francisco's glittering skyline sprawled out like a jeweled carpet. "Sweetheart, that's," I started, but she interrupted, thrusting her left hand toward the lens. The diamond exploded in the light, scattering rainbow fragments across her flushed cheeks. "Look at this ring, Dad. Isn't it gorgeous?" Before I could find words, another figure appeared in the frame. A man, tall, impeccably styled, his jawline sharp enough to belong in a toothpaste commercial. His arms slid around her shoulders like a claim, his smile too polished to be real. "Mr. Rice," he said smoothly, his voice rich with the confidence of men who believe the world is already theirs. "I'm Harold Kensington. I promise your daughter will be the happiest woman in the world." My pulse quickened. The name itself carried weight, and yet the way he delivered it felt rehearsed like a sales pitch. Eva beamed. "Dad, I'm so happy. Tell me about Harold." I forced my voice to match her joy, though unease gnawed at me. "Well, I'd like to hear about him from you." Her words tumbled out in a rush. "He's a cryptocurrency investor, Dad. He's brilliant, ambitious. His portfolio includes blockchain startups, NFTs, renewable energy projects. Markets have been volatile lately." Harold cut in smoothly, his hand tightening on her shoulder. His thumb traced slow circles against her skin, not tender, but proprietary. His eyes, I noticed, never stayed with mine. They flickered to something off-screen, as though he were checking another device, another call, another deal. A gold watch caught the light on his wrist, its deliberate display too precise to be accidental. I studied him silently. His polished words, his easy charm, all of it was a performance. But beneath it, a nervous tick. He twisted a gold ring on his pinky, an unconscious movement that betrayed cracks in the mask. "When's the wedding?" I asked finally. "March 15th, Eva squealed, bouncing. "I know it's soon, but Harold found this amazing venue with a last-minute cancellation, the Fairmont, San Francisco. Can you believe it? 2 months. My only daughter planned to marry a man I just met in 2 months." "That's quite fast," I said carefully. Harold's smile tightened just slightly. "When you know, sir. And Eva deserves her dream wedding. Opportunities like this don't wait." He leaned closer to her, his presence swallowing the screen. Eva practically glowed. Harold's taking care of everything, Dad. The vendors, the arrangements, all of it. I don't have to worry about a single thing. That should have reassured me. Instead, a chill wrapped itself around my chest. I forced myself to smile. Well, Harold, I look forward to meeting you properly. Likewise, Mr. Rice, he replied, eyes cool and unreadable. I've heard so much about you. But in that moment, I wasn't sure whether to feel honored or warned. After another round of excited chatter about flowers, menus, and seating charts, Eva and Harold finally ended the call. The apartment fell silent again, the kind of silence that presses against your chest when you've been holding your breath too long. I sat there in my worn leather chair, the darkness creeping back into the room like an old unwelcome guest. The glow from the phone screen faded to black in my palm, leaving me staring at my own reflection, a tired man with worry etched into every line of his face. The newspaper lay crumpled on the carpet, forgotten, and the coffee beside me had long since gone cold. My hand reached for it instinctively, but the bitter taste when I finally sipped only deepened the unease already churning inside me. Something about Harold wouldn't leave me alone. It wasn't one single thing I could point to. It was everything in fragments. The way he dominated the conversation with effortless charm while disguising it as deference. The way his laugh came a fraction too late, his smile held just a beat too long. Even his clothes, expensive, perfectly tailored, looked too pristine, like costumes borrowed for a role, rather than the natural wardrobe of a man comfortable in his own skin. For 13 nights, I lay awake, turning those details over in my mind like jagged stones. My doubts multiplied in the dark, whispering that maybe I was too cynical, maybe age had made me suspicious of anyone who smiled too easily. But another voice, the one honed by decades in real estate, the one that had sniffed out more liars and slick talkers than I could count, kept insisting that something wasn't right. On the 13th day, my phone buzzed again. Harold's name lit up the screen. His voice carried a rehearsed warmth as he asked to meet just the two of us, man to man. I hesitated, but curiosity and that unshakable knot of unease pushed me to agree. The cafe on Manhattan's Upper East Side was exactly the sort of place I expected Harold would choose. Quiet, polished, the kind of understated wealth where discretion came at $50 a plate. Marble-top tables glistened under soft lighting, and the servers moved like shadows. I spotted him in the corner booth. Even in his navy suit pressed to perfection, he looked unsettled, like a man whose mask was slipping. Mr. Rice, he greeted, standing with a damp-palmed handshake. Thank you for coming. Please sit. Can I order you something? Coffee's fine, I said, studying him as we settled across from one another. In person, his polished charm looked more fragile, like expensive veneer, stretched too thin over cheap wood. How are the wedding preparations? I asked lightly, trying to draw him out. Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. He fidgeted with his cup, rotating it with meticulous precision. Then his eyes flicked up, suddenly sharp. Actually, that's part of why I wanted to talk to you. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial hush. Can I trust you with something confidential? Every instinct screamed no, but I nodded. Of course. He leaned forward, lowering his voice even further, as though the marble walls themselves might be listening. My investments are temporarily frozen. Market conditions? Nothing serious. Just a regulatory review on one of my crypto funds it'll resolve in 6 months. He sighed, perfectly timed, perfectly weary. But Eva, she dreams of this fairy tale wedding. I can't bear to disappoint her. I kept my gaze steady on him, watching how his eyes never quite met mine. They darted instead to a spot over my left shoulder, unfocused, rehearsed. The venue requires full payment up front. Flowers, catering, everything. It's more than I can liquidate right now without suffering massive losses. He paused, then added softly, I was hoping you could help bridge the gap. My chest tightened. How much are we talking about? 50,000 would cover everything. He slid a neat folder from his jacket. Here, proof of my portfolio. Over 2 million in assets, just temporarily inaccessible. I flipped through the papers. They looked legitimate, official seals, legal jargon, even financial charts. To anyone else, it might have been convincing. To me, the way he produced them so smoothly, like a magician pulling a card from his sleeve, set every nerve on edge. Mr. Rice, Harold continued, his voice breaking with what sounded like practiced sincerity. I love your daughter more than anything in this world. I just want to give her the life she deserves. He was good, too good. The vulnerability seemed real, the desperation perfectly measured. And yet, as he spoke, I could almost see the strings he was pulling, the script he was reciting. Still $50, $1,000, while no small amount wouldn't devastate my savings. And for Eva's happiness, I found my resolve faltering. All right, I heard myself say, but Eva must never know about this. Relief swept across his face so fast it betrayed him. Of course, it would crush her to think I couldn't provide. I pulled out my checkbook. My hand lingered over the signature line, heavy with doubt. Harold's eyes tracked the pen's every movement, hungry like a hawk circling prey. When I finally tore the check free, he snatched it with almost indecent eagerness, sliding it into his wallet with theatrical care. You won't regret this, Mr. Rice, he said, his smile widening. Eva is going to have the most beautiful wedding San Francisco has ever seen. But as he spoke, that cold knot in my stomach tightened, because I knew it wasn't the wedding he cared about. It was the money. He left almost as quickly as he'd arrived, murmuring something about urgent calls with vendors, his polished shoes clicking briskly against the marble floor until the door swallowed him. I remained behind in that expensive cafe, staring at the untouched dregs of my coffee as if the dark liquid might yield answers. Around me, Manhattan's elite filled the room with the hum of wealth, casual talk of market swings, new summer homes, and vacations in Tuscany. Their laughter and effortless confidence made me feel like an intruder in a world I neither admired nor trusted. The porcelain cup in front of me had long gone cold, yet I kept lifting it absent-mindedly, as if warmth might suddenly return. My phone rested heavy in my pocket, its presence like a stone pressing against my ribs. I should call Eva. I should ask her questions, the kind of questions any sane father would ask, before handing over $50,000 to a man he barely knew. I should check Harold's story, verify those two perfect documents, pull one thread to see what unraveled. But instead I stood, left a tip on the marble table, and walked out into the February chill with a secret burning a hole in my conscience. 6 days have passed since that meeting, each one dragging its weight across my shoulders. I've moved through my Brooklyn apartment like a ghost tethered to unfinished business, haunting rooms that once felt like home, but now only echo with unease. The cordless phone rarely leaves my reach, its silent body taunting me with the calls I haven't made. The kitchen mocks me with its pristine counters and empty plates. Food has lost its taste. The living room, once a place of quiet evenings with books and conversation, now feels suffocating, its silence pierced only by the ticking of a clock that refuses to slow down. And the bedroom, our bedroom, offers no refuge. Sleep comes in ragged fragments, and every time I stir awake, Margaret's photograph greets me from the nightstand. I lift the silver frame, often running my thumb across the cool glass, as if the act might conjure her voice. Margaret's smile, gentle, knowing, unyielding, remains frozen in a time when my choices seem clearer. She used to say truth matters more than comfort always. Tonight her words sting like a wound. Margaret never trusted charmers, never believed in promises without proof. She'd have peeled back Harold's polished exterior in days, not months. When Eva was 16 and wanted to date that boy with the motorcycle, Margaret had run background checks so thorough the FBI might have taken notes. But Margaret isn't here anymore. And now I'm the one making decisions that feel like betrayals, not just of her memory, but of everything she taught me about keeping our daughter safe. The phone buzzes, suddenly pulling me from my thoughts. Eva's smiling face fills the screen, her mother's eyes shining back at me. Those eyes sharp, intuitive, now clouded by love, blind trust, and the sparkle of a wedding dream Harold has been so carefully curating. I hesitate, then press dial. The call connects. Dad, perfect timing, Eva chirps, her voice bright. I just got back from the florist. I try to sound casual, but the strain in my voice betrays me. How are the wedding preparations coming along? Wonderful, Dad. Honestly, Harold is amazing. He's handling everything, the band, the photographer, even the hotel staff. All I have to do is show up in my dress. She laughs, full of excitement. Each word carves a deeper line of worry into me. Harold is controlling everything, every detail, every dollar. My money, my silence. Eva, I begin, then stop. Harold's words, that binding promise of secrecy, clamp around my throat like chains. Are you sure you know Harold well enough? I manage, finally, my tone softer than I'd intended. Of course, Dad. Why would you even ask? Her voice shifts, the first trace of defensiveness creeping in. I imagine her moving around her apartment, arranging flowers, flipping through glossy bridal magazines, too swept up in the fantasy to notice the cracks. Just parental worries, I say, retreating. You've only known him a few months. 6 months, she corrects quickly. And when it's right time doesn't matter. You taught me that remember to trust my instincts. Well, mine tell me Harold is perfect for me. Perfect. The word clangs in my head, sharp and false. Nothing and no one is perfect, especially not men who wear perfection like armor. I'm sure you're right, sweetheart, I lie, swallowing the ache in my chest. I can't wait to dance with you at your wedding. We hang up, her voice still ringing in my ears, equal parts joy and naivety. I sit at the kitchen table, Margaret's photo beside me, and pull out the leather journal she gave me years ago. Most of its pages are still blank. I've never been one for writing, but tonight feels different. Tonight I need a record, a witness. February 9th, 2025, gave Harold $50,000 for wedding expenses. Eva doesn't know. Something feels wrong, but I made a promise. I pause, pen hovering, hearing Margaret's voice in my head. You're being a fool. Protect your daughter. Don't let charm cloud your judgment. But another voice whispers back. Sometimes being a good father means stepping aside, letting your child make her own choices, even when they terrify you. I close the journal and slide it back into the drawer, my chest tight with regret. Outside, Brooklyn thrums with ordinary life couples returning from dinner, children tugging at their parents' hands, friends laughing on the way to late movies. The hum of everyday joy drifts through my window like a cruel reminder of what peace feels like. For the first time in decades, I envy them their simple worries, their uncomplicated lives. The wedding is 5 weeks away. 5 weeks for Harold to prove me wrong, or 5 weeks for me to discover just how badly I've failed to protect my daughter. I switch off the kitchen light, Margaret's photo cradled against my chest. If I'm making a mistake, at least I won't carry it alone. 3 days had passed since I'd written in Margaret's leather-bound journal, my shaky handwriting, admitting fears I hadn't even spoken aloud. Now I stood beneath the glowing sign of Le Bernardin, San Francisco's Temple of French Cuisine, where the glass facade gave me a cruelly unobstructed view of the life my daughter was stepping into. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I saw Harold and Ava, bathed in golden light, laughing over crystal champagne flutes as if they'd stepped into a glossy magazine spread. From the sidewalk, I felt more like a bystander than a father, peering in at a world that seemed to be moving further and further beyond my reach. The morning flight from JFK had been a blur of stale air and recycled coffee, and though I'd managed to shower and pull on my navy Brooks Brothers suit, the fabric suddenly felt worn, too ordinary, too small for a place like this. The chandeliers threw a brilliance that made everything silverware, wine glasses, jewels sparkle with deliberate arrogance. Dad Eva's voice carried across the lobby like a bright melody. She glided toward me in a flowing emerald green dress that shimmered with each step, the kind of dress I imagined models wore down Fifth Avenue. She hugged me, her perfume, rich, layered, expensive luxury bottled into a scent. Her diamond engagement ring threw shards of light across the restaurant floor as it caught the chandeliers. For a moment I clung to her, my little girl, my Eva. Then Harold rose. His chair scraped softly against the marble as he stood, each movement slow, deliberate, almost predatory. The charcoal pinstripe suit he wore wasn't just expensive, it was curated, tailored to whisper success and dominance. My $50,000 had clearly been put to work, though not in the way I'd imagined. Mr. Rice, he said smoothly, his teeth a perfect calculated white. So wonderful to see you again. His handshake lasted just a little too long, his thumb pressing into my knuckles with a subtle pressure that carried a message I couldn't quite ignore. I'm in control here. Please sit. Though his words were courteous, Harold's positioning was anything but. He guided me toward the chair that offered the least commanding view of the dining room, reserving the prime vantage point for himself, as if this were his stage, and I was an invited spectator. I took the liberty of ordering wine. Harold continued, his tone dripping with effortless superiority. A Chassagne Montrachet, 2018. Exceptional. It pairs beautifully with the seafood here. Before I could speak, he was already signaling the sommelier, launching into a detailed, almost theatrical monologue about oak barrels, aging processes, and tannins. It wasn't conversation, it was performance. A lecture meant to dazzle Eva and remind me of just how far behind I was in a world that worships sophistication as currency. The menu changes seasonally, Harold said, not even offering me the leather-bound folder. But I recommend the John Dory, unless, of course, you prefer something more traditional. The word dripped with quiet condescension. Dad's actually quite adventurous, Eva interjected quickly, squeezing my hand across the table. Her eyes shone with loyalty, but also with that subtle need to smooth the edges to keep peace between two men who would never see eye to eye. Remember when you tried sushi for the first time in Chinatown? Harold's smile widened sharp and polished. Ah, delightful. Mr. Rice, do you still use a checkbook? How authentic. The air left my lungs in a slow hiss as I forced a calm reply. Sometimes the old ways work best. Of course, he said, voice syrupy with false agreement, though I imagine keeping track of expenses must be challenging without digital banking. He leaned back then, draping one arm across Ava's shoulders with a practiced ease that was half affection, half possession. Ava, he said with mock playfulness, your father probably remembers when Bitcoin cost pennies. Don't you, sir? I clenched my jaw. Harold, maybe we should talk about something else. Ah, my apologies, he said with feigned humility. I forget not everyone adapts so quickly to new realities. He turned to Eva with theatrical concern. Sweetheart, do you think we should explain cryptocurrency basics, or might that be overwhelming? Eva giggled. My daughter actually giggled, the sound soft and sweet, but laced with the kind of nervousness that broke me inside. She was defending me without realizing she was exposing me, caught in the tug of war between the man who had raised her and the man she believed she loved. The waiter arrived with our first course, an artistic swirl of scallops on porcelain plates. Harold dissected his portion with the precision of a surgeon, all while weaving an intricate tale about market volatility, interest rates, and global trade. Every few minutes, he'd throw me a scrap of acknowledgement. You might find this interesting, Mr. Rice. But each phrase was bait a reminder that I was an outsider at my own daughter's table. Eva gazed at him as though he hung the moon. Harold, you're so smart, she whispered, her eyes gleaming. Then she turned to me, smiling with innocent pride. Dad, aren't you lucky to have such a son-in-law? Her words landed like stones in my chest. When the check arrived, Harold performed his finale with flair. He produced a black American Express card, letting it catch the chandelier's glow, as though it were Excalibur itself. With a dismissive wave, he silenced my attempt to contribute. Please, Mr. Rice, this is my treat. After all, his eyes lingered on mine, cold and triumphant. What's family for his eyes met mine with a flash of calculated cruelty, the kind that only I noticed. I can certainly afford it. The words lingered in the air like the final move of a chess master, deliberate and humiliating. Outside, the night air was crisp, perfumed faintly with the ocean's salt. I climbed into a taxi, my shoulders sagging, under the weight of helplessness, while Harold slipped his arm around Eva and guided her toward his gleaming Tesla. Through the rear window, I saw him lean down, pressing a kiss against her forehead with the tender possessiveness of a man who believed he'd already won. His laughter floated across the street, sharp and triumphant, like a victory song sung in a language only I understood. My fists tightened in my lap as the cab pulled away, city lights streaking across the glass like tears I refused to shed. Something was wrong with Harold Kensington. Very, very wrong. Sleep became impossible. I lay in my sterile hotel bed until 11:30, staring at the ceiling, while every smirk, every carefully placed insult replayed like a reel of torment in my mind. Harold had stripped me of dignity in front of my own daughter, and she had not seen it. Or worse, she had chosen not to. Finally, exhaustion gave way to resolve. I swung my legs over the bed, the carpet stiff beneath my bare feet, and shuffled to the cramped desk in the corner. Still in my wrinkled dinner shirt and loosened tie, I sat down before the glow of my laptop. The hotel's Wi-Fi password was taped to the base of the cheap lamp, Pacific 2025. I typed slowly at first, as though hesitant to open a door that could not be shut. Harold Kensington. LinkedIn profiles appeared immaculate and consistent with his story. A few tech blogs, mentions of ventures, even a panel photo from some industry conference. All too perfect, too rehearsed. I narrowed the search. Harold Kensington, San Francisco. Page 3 was where the cracks appeared. A business registration for Kensington Digital Ventures filed just 6 months earlier. The listed address, a UPS store. My gut twisted. I pressed harder. Harold Kensington fraud. The screen changed as though the machine itself hesitated before spilling its secrets. Court filings, Los Angeles County Superior Court. Case number CV 20-47891. Defendant Harold James Kensington. Charges misappropriation of funds, identity theft, investment fraud. I whispered the words aloud to the empty room, my voice trembling, investment fraud. Scrolling further, the details unfolded like a nightmare. Plaintiff Rebecca Martinez, 31 years old. Amount lost, $180,000, for what she believed were cryptocurrency investments. Her photo appeared beside the article, a pretty brunette with warm, trusting eyes. Eyes that looked so much like Eva's it made my chest ache. I searched again, faster now. Harold Kensington, Los Angeles victims. Names and numbers poured onto the screen. Sarah Chen, $95,000. Jennifer Walsh, $240,000. Same story, same pattern. Women with promise in their eyes, their trust disarmed by Harold's polish and charm. Each case ended the same way, empty accounts, shattered lives. My breath caught when I opened a gallery buried in an old news article. Harold smiling at Rebecca at what looked like an engagement party. Harold with Sarah candlelight glinting off wine glasses. Harold with Jennifer, her left hand lifted toward the camera, a diamond ring identical to Eva's. Identical. I nearly pushed the laptop away, but my shaking hands kept dragging me deeper. Hours slipped away. I became a man possessed, copying every file, every article, every police report I could uncover. The hotel's business center printer whirred and groaned, spitting out page after page until the desk and carpet disappeared beneath drifts of paper. A fortress of evidence rose around me, each sheet a weapon against the monster who had charmed my daughter. Court documents detailed his use of aliases, Kensington, Morrison, Richards. He hunted through dating apps, always targeting women of means, constructing elaborate fictions of success and brilliance. The cycle was chillingly precise: meet, court, engage, 6 months, exactly long enough to entwine his victims' hearts and finances. Then vanish, leaving only debts and broken lives. By 5:00 a.m., my eyes burned and my shirt clung damply to my back. Coffee cups littered the desk like trophies of my grim vigil. The evidence sprawled across every surface of the room, a damning mosaic of Harold's crimes. I sat back at last, my body trembling from fatigue and rage. There was no longer doubt, no longer suspicion. Harold James Kensington wasn't just a fraud, he was a predator, and my daughter was his next victim. Photos of Harold's past victims spilled across the desk, smiling women in happier times, their faces frozen before betrayal rewrote their lives. Screenshots of falsified investment portfolios, screenshots of balance sheets that never existed. Testimonies from families who had watched their daughters and sisters unravel under the weight of debt and heartbreak. My God, I whispered to the empty hotel room. What is he doing to my daughter? The words didn't echo, they just settled in the stale air, like smoke, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Outside, San Francisco was already stretching awake. Commuters clutched steaming paper cups as they hurried to trains. Joggers pounded the sidewalks with earbuds in sunlight glinting off glass towers. Normal people living ordinary lives, while mine had collapsed into a grotesque puzzle of scams, aliases, and broken futures. I forced myself to keep moving. Organization gave me control. Each victim got her own manila folder, their names scrawled in black marker like headstones. Rebecca's folder was the thickest. She had fought Harold for 2 years in court before finally surrendering, bankrupt in spirit and in pocket. Sarah's folder contained screenshots of desperate warnings she had posted online, silenced when Harold's attorneys threatened her into silence. Jennifer's file was thinner, but far more haunting. She had simply vanished from the digital world, her social media wiped clean, as if she'd been erased. Then came the final document, an FBI psychological profile. My stomach lurched as I read the words narcissistic personality traits, sociopathic tendencies, skilled at exploiting emotional and familial bonds to achieve financial objectives. I dropped the paper onto the pile like it had burned my hands. By the time dawn pushed its pale light through the curtains, every inch of the hotel desk was covered with evidence. Coffee cups crowded the corners, and my shirt clung wrinkled and damp against my skin. My phone glowed with the time, 6:47 a.m. In her apartment across the city, Ava would be getting ready for work, probably humming a wedding tune, while Harold watched her from their bed, already plotting his next move. I couldn't wait another day. The time for secrets was gone. By 7:15 a.m., Valentine's Day sunlight poured in golden through the glass, cruel in its cheerfulness. On the desk, Harold's Life of Lies lay spread before me like a deck of poison cards. Romance, manipulation, ruin. Over and over again. I dialed my daughter's number with a hand that no longer shook. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright, tender, unguarded, the voice of a woman in love 3 weeks from her wedding. Morning, Dad. Did you sleep well? Wasn't dinner amazing? Her happiness was a blade straight to the chest. Eva, I said carefully, clutching Rebecca Martinez's court filing as if it could anchor me. I need to tell you something important. Please, are you sitting down? I'm getting ready for work, but what's wrong? You sound serious. My throat closed, but I forced the words out. Harold asked me for $50,000 for the wedding. You told me he was a millionaire. Silence stretched across the line until it felt unbearable, taut as a wire ready to snap. You're lying, Ava whispered. Harold would have told me. Her voice cracked. Sweetheart, he said, his assets were frozen. He begged me not to tell you. That's not what a millionaire does. That's what a con man does. That's impossible. He shows me his investment accounts. He has millions. I steadied my breathing, staring at the black letters on the court document. Ava, he has a court case. Fraud. Los Angeles County case number CV 2024-7891. He stole from a woman named Rebecca Martinez. I have the documents right here. I heard shuffling, hurried footsteps. Harold's muffled voice asked what was wrong. Ava's breathing grew jagged, panicked. You're making this up, she snapped, tears breaking through her anger. You can't stand that I'm grown, that I don't need you anymore. Ava, please just look at the evidence. Rebecca isn't the only one. There's Sarah Chen, Jennifer Walsh. He's done this before. The same pattern. Always. The line went silent, then shifted. I knew before he even spoke who had taken the phone. Mr. Rice. Harold's smooth voice oozed down the line, calm, poisonous. I understand your concern, but these accusations, they're lies. Old, recycled, discredited. I was cleared of all charges in Los Angeles. His tone was warm, reasonable, even protective. The kind of voice that could turn truth into fiction and fiction into truth. The kind of voice that had already stolen my daughter's heart. The case is still pending, Harold. I have the current filings. My voice was steady, but my pulse thundered in my ears. You're feeding her outdated information from business partners you defrauded. I have the truth right here in front of me. On the other end, Harold let out a low chuckle, smooth as polished stone. Disgruntled former colleagues, Mr. Rice. Bitter men who couldn't manage their own failures. Eva knows my finances. She knows me. But in the background, I didn't hear confidence. I heard my daughter's muffled sobs. The sound of her breaking piece by piece while this man wrapped his lies around her like silk. Then Harold's tone shifted, growing soft, almost tender, a lover's whisper designed to disarm. Sweetheart, he murmured, your father is trying to sabotage our happiness. Some parents simply can't let go, but we don't need his approval, not when we have each other. Let me talk to him. My reply came out sharper than I intended, ragged with desperation. She's too upset right now, Harold. You've already hurt her with this manipulation? For a moment's silence. Then Ava's voice cut through, jagged and raw. How could you do this to me? She cried, her words wet with tears. How could you lie about Harold just to ruin my wedding? My throat closed, but I forced air through it. I'm not lying, Ava. There are photos of him with other women. He gave them rings the exact same design as yours. You think you're the first, you're not. He's done this before? Her scream tore through me, high-pitched and furious. Enough. You can't stand that I found someone who loves me for who I am, not for who you want me to be. The words lodged in my chest like glass shards. Still, I tried one final time, my voice breaking apart on the edges of grief. Ava, please. Just look at the evidence before you marry him. I'm sending everything to your email now. Her reply was a death sentence. Don't come to my wedding. I'm serious. If you love me at all, stay away. You've chosen lies over my happiness. Then the line went dead. I sat frozen, phone pressed to my ear long after the call had ended. The desk before me was a graveyard of papers, court filings, photographs, testimonies scattered like the remains of a relationship I'd spent 28 years building. Through the hotel window, the city glittered in Valentine's Day sunlight. Lovers strolled hand in hand toward brunches, laughter echoing through the streets. All the while in room 412, a father lost his daughter to a man he knew would destroy her. The email I'd promised to send glowed on my laptop screen unsent. My finger hovered above the keyboard, trembling. Harold had won this round. He had twisted my protection into persecution, reshaped my love into control. But fathers don't surrender easily. 1 month dragged by in slow agony. 31 days of haunting my own apartment in Brooklyn like a ghost that couldn't pass on. My kitchen table had become a shrine to despair, the manila folders still stacked there, their edges curled from coffee stains, and nights too long for sleep. Dust gathered, but I couldn't move them. To touch them would mean admitting that I might never get another chance. Every morning began the same. Phone in hand, screen glowing, no new messages, no missed calls, only her smiling contact photo blurred by the sting of my tears mocking me with a joy I could no longer reach. On my desk, a pile of letters grew, unmailed apologies, half-finished pleas. Each one began the same way, "Dear Ava," and each ended the same way, too crumpled, discarded in the wastebasket. I was a father unraveling, undone, not by death or distance, but by the choice of my only child. Margaret's photograph watched me from the mantel, her smile frozen in the soft sepia of time. I pulled Harold's court documents from their folder again, the paper edges worn and greasy from my hands. How many times had I read them? 100, 1,000. Each time I searched for certainty, and each time doubt whispered back. Maybe I'd been too hasty, too suspicious. The internet lied every day, didn't it? Photographs could be doctored court records, misinterpreted articles, twisted by bitter rivals. Eva always said I was overprotective. Maybe she was right. Maybe Harold really was the man she believed him to be. "She's a grown woman," I whispered to the empty room, but the words dissolved into the still air. Concern had started leaking through the cracks of my life. Mrs. Patterson from downstairs left worried voicemails about how thin I looked. The mailman, kind old Mr. Carter, asked if I'd been traveling, pointing to the mountain of uncollected envelopes stuffed in my box. Even my doctor's office called about a missed appointment, one I couldn't even remember scheduling. But none of it mattered. Today was March 14th. Tomorrow my daughter would stand beneath a canopy of flowers and marry Harold Kensington, whether or not her father was there. I reached for Margaret's silver frame. My thumb traced the curve of her lips, the laugh lines that had deepened with every year we'd shared. "Margaret, what would you do?" I whispered. Her gentle eyes seemed to answer in the silence. "Sometimes love means letting go." The thought burrowed deep, unsettling me. Maybe the court filings were fabricated. Maybe those other women had lied, seeking money, revenge, or attention. Maybe Harold truly loved Iva, and my grief-clouded judgment had twisted everything into shadows. After all, what father ever easily hands his daughter over to another man? "Maybe it's just slander," I murmured. With trembling hands, I closed the evidence folders. The sound was final, like the shutting of a coffin lid. By noon, I had made my decision. I would go to the wedding not as an accuser, but as a father. I would bless her, apologize, and try to rebuild what I had shattered with my doubts. The jewelry store on Fifth Avenue welcomed me with its familiar hush. 30 years ago, I had stood at this very counter choosing Margaret's engagement ring, my heart soaring with possibility. Today, I chose something meant to carry that same weight of promise, a vintage Cartier necklace, diamonds, catching the light like captured stars. The saleswoman wrapped it in ivory silk, tucking in a small card that read, in my careful handwriting, "For my daughter on her wedding day. All my love, Dad." At JFK, I sat stiffly in the departure lounge, the gift balanced on my lap like a fragile secret. All through the flight to San Francisco, I rehearsed my apology in silence. "I was wrong, Iva. Harold seems like a good man. I only want your happiness. Please forgive me." The words looped endlessly, a litany of surrender. As the plane lifted through the dusk, New York's skyline dwindled below me, its lights glowing like dying embers. I closed my eyes and forced myself to imagine tomorrow not as an ending, but as a beginning. Maybe fathers had to learn to trust their daughters' choices, even when those choices terrified them. The Fairmont San Francisco stood waiting like a wedding cake carved in marble and crystal, its banners rippling in the evening wind. Rice Kensington celebration. My taxi pulled to the curb and I stepped out, smoothing the lapels of my navy suit, the same one I had worn to walk Iva across the stage at her college graduation. My hands trembled around the gift box as laughter and the strains of a string quartet floated from inside. Guests streamed toward the hotel entrance, shimmering in silk and pressed suits' faces glowing with anticipation. I spotted Iva's college roommate, my brother Frank from Boston, even neighbors from our old street in Queens. Familiar smiles tugged at my memory, reminding me of a world that had once felt whole. Then I froze. My own face stared back at me from an ornate easel near the entrance doors. A large black and white photograph, professional and merciless. Beneath it, elegant calligraphy spelled words that struck like a physical blow. Entry forbidden. Giles Rice by request of the bride and groom. The Cartier box slipped in my hands. My fingers had turned to stone. Around me, the tide of guests slowed, their voices dropping as they read the sign. A few hurried past with guilty glances. Others looked at me with pity, whispering to companions. A uniformed guard appeared at my side, tall, broad-shouldered, his name tag catching the light Martinez. His voice was low, professional, but not unkind. "Excuse me, sir. You're not expected here." I turned toward him, my throat tight, words clawing their way out. This is my daughter's wedding?" The admission came out strangled, barely audible above the soft music spilling from inside. For a heartbeat, Martinez hesitated, his hand resting gently on my elbow. His eyes softened. Perhaps he had daughters too. But his duty held firm, and I stood on the sidewalk, the world moving past me, shut out of my own child's future. "I'm very sorry, sir, but I have clear instructions." The couple was quite specific about this arrangement. Martinez's voice was polite, professional even, but each word landed like a nail being driven into a coffin. Through the wide glass doors behind him, the reception hall unfolded in all its dazzling beauty. White roses cascading from tall crystal stands, gold-rimmed china arranged in perfect symmetry, champagne glasses sparkling like prisms in the afternoon light. I recognized my money in every glittering detail. $50,000 of mine, weeks of Harold's persuasion, promises of family honor, and Eva's hopeful insistence had been poured into creating a dream I was forbidden to witness. Guests streamed past us, a steady current of silk dresses, polished shoes, and cologne. Their laughter faltered as they approached the easel at the entrance, their eyes darting from the elegant black and white photograph of me to the bold calligraphy beneath it, entry forbidden. Giles Rice, by request of the bride and groom. Some guests lowered their voices to hushed whispers, others hurried along with averted eyes as though rejection might be contagious. A few paused, recognition flickering across their faces. Men and women who had once stood in my backyard holding paper plates of birthday cake, who had toasted Iva at her graduation, who had known me as the father who never missed a milestone. Now they stared as though I'd been recast as some dangerous intruder. Carefully, I placed the Cartier box at the foot of my own photograph. The ivory silk wrapping gleamed against the polished marble floor like an accusation untouched, unopened. Inside, diamonds lay waiting to rest on my daughter's throat. Diamonds I had chosen in the hope of reconciliation, of forgiveness. "Now I understand, Harold," I whispered, my voice carrying only to Martinez, who shifted uneasily at my side. "Now I understand everything." But it wasn't anger that filled me. Anger was too raw, too human. What coursed through me was something colder, sharper, a clarity that stripped me clean. This wasn't rejection alone. It was humiliation, deliberate and orchestrated. Harold hadn't just taken my daughter. He had staged my erasure as a public spectacle, ensuring that every guest would see me for what he had painted me, to be the father too toxic to stand at his child's wedding. I straightened my tie with slow, deliberate fingers, swallowing the last remnants of pride that still tried to cling. My voice came out steady. Could you call me a taxi, please? I need to get to Chase Bank before they close. Relief softened Martinez's posture. He nodded quickly as though grateful that this scene would end quietly without escalation. Of course, sir. Right away. As I waited, I allowed myself one last glance at the easel. The man in that photograph still carried hope in his eyes, the fragile, desperate belief that love could overcome manipulation, that a daughter might choose blood over betrayal. That man had been a fool. I was no longer him. The taxi arrived, its headlights flickering against the marble facade. I slid into the back seat without another word. By 4:30 p.m., I stood before the granite columns of Chase Bank's downtown San Francisco branch. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the pavement, the world moving on as though nothing in it had cracked open. Inside the lobby hummed with the slow rhythm of a Saturday skeleton crew tellers, glancing at the clock, the scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. I approached the customer service desk with the same measured calm I had once wielded to close million-dollar real estate deals. My driver's license and account documents slid across the polished counter, my hands steady as though I were simply finalizing another contract. The young banker, Jessica, her name tag read, looked up with her polite practice smile. "Good afternoon. How can I help you today? I need to cancel a check immediately." Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. "Of course, sir. Could you provide the check number and amount? Check number 2847. $50,000, made out to Harold Kensington." I spelled each letter of his name with deliberate precision, savoring the sound of every syllable as it passed through my teeth. Jessica hesitated, her eyes flicking up cautious. "Sir, if the check has already been submitted for payment, this could create problems for the recipient." I held her gaze steady and cold. "That's exactly what I'm interested in." For the briefest moment, something like understanding passed over her features. She'd seen this story before. Betrayed spouses, broken business partners, families at war. Without another word, she retrieved the official stop payment forms, sliding them toward me with a pen. "There's a $35 processing fee. The cancellation will take effect immediately. Any attempts to cash or deposit the check will be declined." Perfect. I signed each page slowly, the same careful signature I had once written on Harold's original check. The irony wasn't lost on me. The money he had thought secured was now a weapon turned against him. Jessica slid the confirmation slip across the desk. "The stop payment is now active, Mr. Rice. Here's your receipt." I folded the paper neatly, tucking it into my jacket pocket like a battle flag reclaimed. For the first time in weeks, my chest expanded, with something close to breath, my heart steady. Harold had wanted me erased, humiliated, stripped of dignity. But he had forgotten one thing: fathers don't surrender. Not when it comes to their daughters. Not ever. Jessica slid the paperwork across the counter with the kind of precision that suggested she'd done this countless times before, quietly arming the wounded with the paperwork of revenge. Her expression was professional, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew this wasn't just about money. It never was. I folded the receipt as though it were something sacred, tucking it into my wallet beside the photograph of Eva on her college graduation day, her cap tilted too far back, her smile so radiant it could have lit the whole campus. That girl had been mine once, before Harold, before all this. Across the city, I imagined Harold standing in front of a gilded mirror, adjusting his cufflinks, rehearsing the smug smile he'd wear when he pulled Eva into his carefully constructed world. He believed the day belonged to him. He believed that every rose, every crystal flute, every note of the string quartet was already paid for, funded by the check I had written. He believed I'd surrendered. But belief is a fragile currency, and Harold was about to discover just how quickly it collapses when the numbers no longer add up. By now, the ceremony was probably underway. Eva walking down the aisle in a gown Harold had whispered into her imagination, arm in arm with someone else, because her father wasn't worthy of the role. Guests dressed in silk and satin would have seen my face on that cruel poster at the door, the portrait of a man declared unfit, unworthy, unwanted. Laughter and clinking glasses would echo through the ballroom, while outside my gift box lay unopened beside that photograph, a silent monument to betrayal. But I knew something they didn't. In just a few hours, as the caterers wheeled out trays of lobster and champagne flutes, trembled in eager hands, Harold would be summoned. A polite smile, a request for payment, a simple assumption that his accounts were intact. And then nothing. No funds, no lifeline, just silence and the cold steel edge of reality. The man who had made a career from twisting financial trust into personal gain was about to face the moment every con man fears: the unraveling, the exposure, the public stripping of his mask. "Will there be anything else today?" Mr. Rice, Jessica asked, her voice pulling me back to the present. I looked at her and shook my head slowly. "No, you've been more helpful than you know." Stepping out of Chase Bank, the California sun hit me like molten gold. Warm, blinding, cleansing. I slipped the confirmation receipt deeper into my pocket where it sat like a loaded revolver. Behind me, invisible systems were already shifting gears, flagging transactions, rejecting payments, alerting vendors that the generous check with Harold's name attached had turned to dust. The taxi ride back to the airport was steeped in silence, the kind of silence that hums with satisfaction. Sometimes revenge didn't need to be loud or violent. Sometimes it only required patience, paperwork, and timing. 2 hours later, I sat alone in my hotel room, staring out at San Francisco's skyline as it came alive with 1,000 glittering lights, each one flickering like a promise kept. The receipt was still in my wallet, folded with the same precision as my tie had been that morning. Outside, the Fairmont's ballroom was likely glowing with candlelight, the quartet booing the familiar strains of Pachelbel's canon, while Iva spun in Harold's arms across polished marble. I should have felt grief, should have been crushed by the weight of absence. Instead, I felt a cold, crystalline satisfaction settle into my bones. My phone buzzed. First, a message from Frank, beautiful ceremony. "Wish you could have been here." Then another, this time from a number I didn't recognize, payment terminal acting up. Very strange. And then the third one, the one that made me laugh, a short, sharp sound that startled even me. "Harold looks like he's seen a ghost." I leaned back in the chair, eyes half closed, savoring the image. I could picture it clearly, Harold striding toward the catering manager, black Amex card in hand, flashing it with the same arrogance he'd displayed at our disastrous dinner. The card sliding the machine, beeping its rejection with mechanical indifference. A pause. Another attempt. Another beep. Then a frown. The shuffle of backup cards pulled from his wallet, each one declined in turn. Vendors whispering. Guests noticing. A ripple spreading across the ballroom like a stone dropped into still water. "There must be a mistake," he'd say, his voice cracking, as a panic began to creep in. "No, Harold. There was no mistake. The mistake was thinking you could erase me, and tonight, in front of everyone, you'd learn what it felt like to be erased yourself. This is impossible." Harold's voice would rise louder now, cutting through the ballroom like a blade. Beads of sweat glistened on his forehead, despite the room's carefully regulated climate, betraying the unraveling beneath his polished facade. The musicians had already stopped mid-phrase, bows hovering awkwardly above strings as the catering manager shook her head. Their payment authorization had failed as well. With no money, the music died. The photographer, who only minutes ago had been orchestrating perfect smiles and timeless poses, was quietly disassembling his lenses and packing away cameras worth more than most cars. He offered a tight, apologetic smile, repeating the same phrase every vendor knew by heart: "Contracts require immediate settlement." Even the florists, artists of beauty, were reduced to salvage workers moving swiftly between tables, plucking roses and lilies from vases. Guests watched in disbelief as the lush centerpieces that had moments before been admired were carried out the doors piece by piece, like a slow funeral procession for the wedding itself. "Eva, what's happening? Why is everyone leaving?" My daughter's voice cracked, confusion laced with panic. Her dream was dissolving in front of her eyes. Guests, Harold's wealthy associates, family members draped in jewels, colleagues who had come expecting opulence, began whispering, then recording. Social media posts shifted from glossy congratulatory photos to shaky videos of chaos tables, stripped bare servers, pausing mid-service, and a groom unraveling under the spotlight. And then came Harold's breaking point. His voice, usually coded in charm, sharpened into accusation. "Your father, he did this. He ruined our wedding." It was the first time Harold's mask truly cracked, his desperation spilling out like blood in water. The elegant illusion had collapsed, and now all that was left was blame. But I wasn't there to watch. I was 3,000 miles away, a half-finished room service coffee, cooling on the nightstand of my Manhattan hotel. My phone lit up with frantic calls, one after another, Harold's name screaming from the screen. I let them ring. I let them pile up. Each unanswered vibration was another thread unraveling his empire. 73 missed calls. I counted them twice. Each red badge was a pulse, a heartbeat of Harold's desperation. At first it was only him. Harold, call after call, his carefully modulated voice fraying with every voicemail. The first message left at 7:15 p.m. still carried traces of his slick confidence. Mr. Rice, there seems to be a technical issue with the banking systems. If you could call back, we'll sort this out quickly. By message 15, the tone shifted. The veneer was slipping. Sir, I need you to contact the bank immediately. This is extremely urgent. By message 37, panic had consumed him. Please, Mr. Rice, the wedding is falling apart. There's been some terrible mistake. I poured myself a scotch from the minibar amber liquid, catching the glow of the city lights beyond the glass. Manhattan twinkled beneath me, indifferent to the destruction happening 3,000 miles away. I sat back in the leather armchair, the phone buzzing like a frantic insect on the nightstand. The later messages were chaos captured in audio. Vendors shouting in the background. Guests murmuring, chairs scraping silverware, clattering as service stopped mid-course. The cavernous echo of a ballroom being gutted of its magic, and Harold's voice pleading, cursing, cracking, sliding into desperation. I know what you think happened, but I can explain everything. The money, yes, I needed help, but I was going to pay you back. Please, she's crying. Your daughter is crying. I swirled the scotch in my glass, savoring the sound, the weight, the quiet contrast to the storm inside my phone. And then message 68. The frantic, oily tone of Harold was gone. Instead, I heard her, Eva, her voice small and broken, carried across the line like a child again. Dad, please come back. Harold confessed everything. The glass paused in my hand. I set the scotch down slowly, my eyes fixed on the phone as her words echoed raw and trembling. For the first time that night, the satisfaction twisted into something heavier. Not victory, not revenge, but the sound of my daughter's cry for me. This was the moment I had been waiting for: vindication, justice, the crumbling of the man who had stolen so much from us. But when I finally heard my daughter's tears spilling through the phone, my chest tightened in a way I hadn't expected. Revenge felt hollow when weighed against the sound of her breaking. The 74th call came at 9:43 p.m. I almost let it ring out like the others, but something in me shifted. I pressed accept. Dad. Eva's voice was barely a whisper, hoarse, trembling. I closed my eyes. I'm here, sweetheart. He told me everything. Each word she spoke was jagged, like broken glass lodged in her throat. The money, the debts, the other women. Her breath hitched. You were right. About everything. The court cases, the lies, all of it. Through the receiver, I could hear Harold in the background, his mask fully ripped away. His voice was high-pitched, frantic, nearly unhinged. She doesn't understand. I love her. The money doesn't matter. I'll fix it. I'll fix all of it. I waited until his voice faded into the chaos around her before I spoke. My words were steady, each one deliberate. I'll come back to San Francisco. But listen to me carefully, Eva. I won't pay for anything else. Not after the lies. Not after the humiliation. There will be no more checks. There was silence on the other end, broken only by her soft, stifled sobs. Then finally understood Dad. Just please be here. I need you. Pack your things, sweetheart. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. When I hung up, the room seemed impossibly quiet. I sat for a long moment, the city's glow spilling through the hotel window, New York breathing in its endless rhythm. Somewhere 3,000 miles away, Harold Kensington's empire of deceit was collapsing. Sometimes the best revenge didn't come from confrontation. Sometimes the sweetest justice was simply allowing someone to reveal their true nature when the pressure grew too great. And Harold had cracked wide open. 3 months later, the city had changed its clothes. Summer heat shimmered off Brooklyn's sidewalks, the air heavy with asphalt and distant music from open windows. I heard the sound of familiar footsteps on the stairwell, slower now heavier. I looked through the peephole and there she was, Eva, my daughter. Two worn suitcases by her side, her shoulders slumped beneath the weight of more than just luggage. Her face was thinner drawn, but there was something in her eyes, steel determination. I opened the door before she could knock. Dad. Her voice broke immediately, and the words tumbled out. Forgive me. You were right about everything. She collapsed into my arms just as she had when she was 7 years old, when a fall from her bicycle had left her scraped and sobbing. I held her just as tightly now, only this wound was deeper and visible. Sweetheart, I whispered, my own voice shaking. You're my daughter. We'll get through this together. Inside, I guided her to the couch, the same leather sofa where this nightmare had begun with that January video call. Back then, the table had been stacked with evidence folders, every document a testament to Harold's lies. Now those folders were gone, delivered long ago to the FBI. Only one thing remained unchanged: Margaret's photograph on the mantel, her kind eyes watching over us. He took almost everything, Eva admitted, her voice fragile. The house, my savings, even Grandma's jewelry. After the wedding collapsed, he became desperate. He started forging my signature, draining accounts I didn't even know existed. Her shame was palpable, every sentence weighed down with guilt. I squeezed her hand, grounding her in the present. The television murmured in the background, the evening news filling the silence neither of us could. And then, as if fate had been waiting for its cue, Harold's face appeared on the screen. But it wasn't the polished headshot from his fraudulent business profiles. It was a mugshot. His hair disheveled, his once practiced smile replaced with the hollow stare of a man whose empire had turned to ash. Harold Kensington, the anchor, intoned, her voice professional, detached. Arrested for fraud in especially large amounts. Federal investigators confirm he targeted wealthy families across multiple states through romantic manipulation, stealing over $2 million. Eva's head turned toward the screen. Her lips parted, trembling as she absorbed the image. Her voice was barely audible when she whispered, "They called me yesterday. I'm not his only victim, am I?" I reached across the coffee table, pulled a folder from the drawer where I had hidden it, and spoke the names I had memorized months ago. Rebecca Martinez, Sarah Chen, Jennifer Walsh. Eva's eyes widened as I continued softly. You weren't his first, sweetheart, but you will be his last. The anchor's voice carried on, cataloging every piece of evidence I already knew: multiple identities, forged investment documents, a pattern of targeting successful women through dating apps, draining them dry over 6 months before moving on. Each revelation struck like a hammer, not to me, but to her. Proof. Validation. Harold would face justice now, and for the first time in over a year, I saw it in my daughter's eyes: relief. She wasn't broken, not entirely, and together we would rebuild. Justice will be restored, I whispered, pulling my daughter closer as though my embrace could shield her from the wreckage Harold had left behind. Her body trembled against mine, not from fear anymore, but from the exhaustion of surviving a war she never asked to fight. The federal investigation had moved swiftly once Harold's house of cards came crashing down. My sleepless February night, the one where I pored over bank statements, photographs, and whispered suspicions, had been the seed. From there, investigators unearthed a labyrinth of deceit Harold had built brick by brick, lie by lie, and when the wedding imploded, his desperation only made him reckless. He forged more signatures, made more calls, took risks that sealed his own downfall. When you've built your life on lies, I murmured, half to myself, half to Iva, the truth has a way of surfacing when you least expect it. She nodded, her face pale but steady. I testified before the grand jury last week, she said quietly, her voice laced with both dread and relief. They think he's looking at 15 to 20 years. I exhaled slowly. The number was staggering, but not undeserved. For Harold, years behind bars would be a fitting silence after the chaos he had inflicted. Outside, Brooklyn carried on with its familiar evening rhythm. Through the window, I could see parents tugging strollers along the sidewalk, families gathering at kitchen tables, neighbors calling out to one another. Normal people living honest lives, the kind I had once envied during my darkest moments, when lies and betrayal seemed to be all that surrounded us. What now? Iva asked suddenly, her voice softer than the hum of the city. I turned, letting my eyes wander across the apartment. This small space had been my refuge, the fortress where I had endured the storm. The leather couch where she now sat was the same place I had once sat alone, holding folders of evidence that no one wanted to believe. And yet here we were together, the storm finally passing. My gaze fell on her, my daughter. Older now, wiser, scarred by choices not her own, but standing, surviving. She was not broken, and that more than anything was my victory. Now, I said, my voice steady, we rebuild. Together. On the mantel, Margaret's photograph seemed to glow in the lamplight, her familiar smile carrying both comfort and approval. I imagined her watching us, proud that love had endured, that truth had not only survived but prevailed. Sometimes protecting the people you love means making decisions they hate you for. It means being the villain in their eyes until the truth finally reveals itself. But love, real love, outlasts anger. And truth, though it may take its time, always rises. And justice, when it finally comes, is sweeter than revenge could ever be. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box to the left. Thank you for watching.